Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. I am so happy you're here. We're gonna pick my November TBR today. It is currently October 25th and I only have one book left on my October TBR, so I'm very proud of that. I'm in such a big reading mood, so we're definitely gonna pick a few more prompts today. I've always done my TBRs with my TBR prompt jar, but I don't have a printer and I'm honestly way too lazy to write down like 100 prompts by hand. So we're gonna do it a little differently this time. I created this spinner wheel with a few different prompts. So we're gonna pick a few prompts from that one. And then I also created a wheel for all of the books that are on my physical TBR right now, because I feel like with those prompts, I tend to pick the books I'm the most excited about. And there are a few books on my TBR that have been on there for years, so I also want to give those a chance. So I think we're gonna pick like 7 TBR prompts and then also 2 books from my physical TBR. I think that's a good amount of books for November. So let's get started. I'm just gonna record my screen while I spin the wheel and we're gonna see what prompt we get. Let's spin the wheel for the first time. I am so excited. The prompt we got is a book with a magical school. I have a few options for that, and I think I know what book I'm gonna pick, so I'm gonna get that real quick. I could read the next book in the Zodiac Academy series. I think I'm on book 5 and I haven't continued that series in quite a while, but I think the book I'm gonna pick up for this prompt is The School for Good and Evil. This is the first part in a series. I think it's middle grade, if I remember correctly, so it's definitely not something I usually would pick up, but this has been on my TBR for so long and I've kind of waited for winter to start because usually in the fall and winter time I'm really in the mood for fantasy. This follows Sophie and Agatha, and they live in this village where kids get kidnapped to attend a magical school, and that school is divided into 2 parts. I'm not sure if they're separate schools or if they're just divided, but one is for heroes, the school for good, and one is for villains, the school for evil. And Sophie dreams of becoming a princess and wants to get into the school for good, and Agatha is more suited to the school for evil because of her gloomy personality. But when they're taken, the schools get switched and Sophie ends up in evil while Agatha ends up in good. So they're now trying to navigate through their friendship and this new home they have. So I think that sounds like a pretty unique story and also a cozy story. So I'm very excited to pick this up. Let's get back to spinning our wheel. Our second prompt is a book with a pink cover. I actually have quite a few books to choose from, but I picked out 3. I have A Werewolf's Guide to Seducing a Vampire. This is the 3rd book in the series, and I've really enjoyed the first 2, but I've read so many witchy fantasy books this month, so I think I'm not gonna pick this up right now. But I also have 2 other options. I have The Baby Dragon Bakery, and I read The Baby Dragon Cafe a few months ago and was so obsessed with it, so I'm very excited to pick this up. But I also have First Time Caller, and this has been so hyped for months and I still haven't picked it up. And I think I'm probably gonna read a lot of fantasy this month, so maybe this would be a good pick to have a break from fantasy in between. So I think I'm gonna go with this one for this prompt. This follows Aiden and Lucy. Aiden is a host of this radio call-in show called Heartstrings, and he's become really cynical of love. And Lucy is a single mom, and she has a really good job and a good family, but she's starting to wonder if she's purposely avoiding romantic relationships. And Lucy's daughter makes a call into Aiden's show asking for dating advice for her mom. And that clip ends up going viral and everybody's talking about it. So Aiden invites Lucy on his show. So I'm assuming they start making these episodes or shows together and they're realizing that they have more in common than they thought they would. It sounds like a very cool premise and I love that Lucy is a mom. I know that children and books are a very controversial topic, but I usually enjoy when there are kids in books because they make everything so much more meaningful and just deeper, especially when you see the love interest forming a bond with the child. So I'm very excited, and I just saw that Hannah Bonham Young has a quote on the back, and since she's becoming one of my favorite authors recently, that makes me even more excited to read this. And I think that I've read another book by B.K. Boyerson before. I think I've read Love Light Farms. I think that book was by B.K. Boyerson as well, but that was a couple of years ago. But I remember that I really loved it, so I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna enjoy this. And I think that the Love Light Farms book is the first book in a series, so maybe I should pick up the other books in a series as well at some point. Time to spin the wheel again. This is always so fun. I could do these videos every single day and would not get tired of them. Our third prompt is a new release. I have no idea what book I'm gonna pick for that one, so I do have to check my TBR if I have any on my physical TBR right now. It only took me like a second to find a book because I totally forgot that I ordered this. This book was only released like 3 or 4 days ago, but I'm gonna read Made by Ali Hazelwood. Her books are always very hit or miss for me. I would say that I didn't enjoy the majority of her books, but I did really enjoy Bride, which was the first book in this. I'm not sure if it's a series or just like interconnected books, but it's definitely set in the same world as Bride. So I'm optimistic that I'm gonna enjoy this, and even the cover gives off November vibes. It kind of reminds me a lot of Twilight. I've never read the Twilight books, and I've only seen the first movie like 15 years ago, I feel like. So maybe I should do that at some point. But this follows Serena, who's our main character, and she's the first ever human werewolf hybrid. So she's very unique, but she's also orphaned and doesn't belong to a pack, which is usually very common for werewolves. Her existence was meant to heal the divide between werewolves, humans, and vampires, but instead of that being the case, she becomes a target. So Cohen, who's the alpha of the Northwest pack, claims her as his mate to protect her, and even though Serena doesn't really trust him, they're kind of forced to work together because of all of the danger she's facing. So it does sound really good. Let's do another spin. Our fourth prompt is a slow burn love story. I'm not the biggest fan of slow burn, so I'm not too excited about this prompt, but I'm gonna check my TBR. As you probably know, I never know anything about the books on my TBR, so I had to check TikTok for slow burn recommendations. And apparently First Time Caller is a slow burn, so I wish we would have picked that for that prompt, but it's fine. I have 2 other options. I have Left Off Forever, which is a small town slow burn, but I just saw that this is the second part in a series. It is an interconnected romance series, so I could read this without reading the first book first, but I kind of don't want to do that. So I think I'm not gonna pick this up. I'm gonna get the first book before reading this. But I do have another option. I have Backboard or Steel by Sarah Adams, and I think this is the 3rd book in the series. I know that Practice Makes Perfect is a part of the series, and also it was When in Rome, Practice Makes Perfect, and now Backboard or Steel. And I've really enjoyed the first 2 books. They're kind of, I feel like people either loved or hated them, but I did really enjoy them. So I've been wanting to pick this up for quite a while, and it's a pretty short book, so It's also perfect as a palette cleanser in between my fantasy books. I do also have a few slow burn fantasy books on my Kindle that I got from Kindle Unlimited, but I think I want to focus on my physical TBR if I can. This is set in a small town of Rome in Kentucky, and we follow Emily, who's a second grade teacher, and she's a really type A person. She has her whole life organized and is really guarded, but her old college nemesis Jack ends up moving in next door. He just broke off an engagement and is now her new neighbor. And it turns out they're both secretly authors. She writes romance books and he writes mystery novels. And Emily accidentally emails her manuscript to her school's principal, and that would reveal her secret identity. So she's trying to avoid that, and in order to solve that accident, she apparently needs Jack's help. So they start working together and they start becoming friends and eventually something more. So this sounds very cute, and I also love that they're both authors. So I think that is going to be a fun part of the story. I said I'm going to pick 7 prompts, but I think I'm going to do only 6 because my stack of books already looks pretty big. And I am a mood reader, so sometimes I pick up other books in between my TBR, so I don't want to overwhelm myself. So I think I'm going to pick only 6 prompts and then 1 book from my physical TBR. So let's pick 2 more prompts. Our 5th prompt is a fake dating romance. Why do we have so many romance prompts? I want to read fantasy. Maybe I can find a fake dating fantasy? I somehow had such a hard time finding a book for this prompt. I don't have any fake dating books on my physical TBR, and then I checked TikTok for recommendations, but I obviously love reading and I read a lot. But because of that, I have pretty much read every single book that is hyped on BookTok or booktube or whatever. So sometimes it's hard to find a recommendation of a book I haven't read yet, and that was the case with that prompt. So I had a hard time finding a book, but I think I'm gonna listen to The Bodyguard by Catherine Zenner because I saw that that is available on Libby and I haven't read it yet. This book follows Hannah, who's a bodyguard, and she just recently lost her mom, so she's dealing with a lot of grief. And she is assigned to protect this actor, Jack, who's returning to his family's ranch in Texas after something happened in his life. But Jack has a stalker and he doesn't want his family to know about that. So he can't really give them a reason why he needs to have a bodyguard. So Jack and Hannah start to fake date to hide this whole thing from his family. I think it's really cool that we have a female bodyguard in this one. And I think the setting of this on his family's ranch is also going to be pretty fun. So I'm excited to listen to this. But since I've picked out an audiobook for this prompt, I think I am going to pick 2 more prompts so that we still have 7 physical books. Let's give the wheel another spin. Hopefully it's going to be a better prompt. Like, not that the prompts are bad, but they just don't fit my mood right now. Our next prompt is a book with dragons, finally. I have a few options. I could read The Priory of the Orange Tree, but I've had that on my, I think, August or September TBR, and I was just too intimidated, and I'm probably not gonna pick it up this month if I'm being honest. So we're not gonna do that. I could also read the next book in the Zodiac Academy series since there are a few dragon shifters in that world, but I still want to focus on my physical TBR first. So I think I'm gonna read The Phoenix Keeper by S.A. McLean. This is a Illumicrate edition and it's really stunning, but I canceled my Illumicrate subscription probably like almost a year ago because I didn't end up reading the books. I'm obsessed with how they look and I enjoyed the ones I've read so far, but they just sit on my shelf and I never read them. So I want to change that, which is why we're going to read this book in November. This is a cozy fantasy with a sapphic romance subplot, and we follow Ayla, who has just landed her dream job as the head keeper of phoenixes at this magical zoo, but the zoo's phoenix program is kind of failing, so Ayla wants to save it, and in order to do that she has to work with her old college nemesis Luciana, who looks after the griffins in the zoo, and they start working together and become friends, and then eventually something more than friends. So I think this is going to be a pretty light fantasy world. It doesn't really sound like high fantasy. I think it will be really cool to read about the different magical creatures, and the zoo also has dragons, so that's why this book fits the prompt. And apparently Ayla also struggles with social anxiety and believing in herself, so that sounds like I could relate to it a lot. Let's spin our prompt wheel for the final time. Our 7th and last prompt is a book where the main character is a writer. I should really pick the prompts first and then pick the books, because this prompt would match the book by Sir Adams, Backboard or Steel. But let's see if I have another book on my TBR that matches that prompt. The book I've picked out for this prompt is Murder at the Bookstore by Sue Minix. And I think this is perfect for November because it's a cozy murder mystery. This follows Jen, who's a crime writer, and she's currently struggling with a writer's block. So she returns to her small hometown and finds sanctuary in her local bookstore, where she's waiting on inspiration to strike. But then the bookstore's owner dies in mysterious circumstances, and Jen is now trying to solve this murder. Apparently there's evidence that Jen was at the scene of the crime when it happened, and the bookstore's owner also named her as the new owner of the bookstore in her will. So she is now the prime suspect and has to prove that she's innocent and figure out who the killer really is. So it sounds like a very fun and cozy read, and it's also a very short book, so I'm really excited for this. I think this is also a series if I remember correctly. But those are all of the prompts. I think I'm gonna spin my physical TBR wheel just once because I do have quite a few books on my TBR now. Okay, so I'm kind of anxious that it's gonna pick a book I'm not in the mood for at all, but we're just gonna do it. The book we're gonna read in November is King of Sloth by Anna Huang. I am excited about this one. Since the purpose of this wheel was to pick up some books that I usually wouldn't, it kind of failed because I've been picking up books in the series quite frequently. This is the 4th book, I think, in the Kings of Sin series, and I've been loving it so much. This follows our FMC Sloan, who's a publicist, and Xavier, who's a billionaire. We've got a few glances into their work relationship in the past few books. I'm not the biggest fan of them as characters yet, but I also don't know a lot about them. So that's probably still gonna change when Xavier's dad passes away. He's supposed to become the next CEO of his family's company. He doesn't really want that, but he basically has no other choice. So Sloan is supposed to manage his public image during that transition of him becoming the new CEO. So they're forced to work together, and we already saw Xavier rage baiting Sloan a lot in the first 3 books, and she's this really no nonsense type of person, so I think the banter in this one is going to be really fun. We have another pretty ambitious stack of books to read in November, but I'm excited for pretty much all of them. So hopefully I'm gonna have a great time reading them. If you have picked out a TBR for November, definitely let me know in the comments what books you plan on reading. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!